So welcome back from the break. So we have a debate competition between the University of Ibadan and Ajayi Crowther University. So I'm going to be bringing up the moderator for the session in the person of Latona Adedeji. Latona, welcome to the World Environment Day Symposium. Thank you for being here today. So the floor is yours. So because of our time, it seems the moderator's network is not so great. So Idowu Ademola, you're speaking for University of Ibadan. So if you can please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, so hi everybody. Happy World Environment Day to us all. I acknowledge the judges and all protocol duly observed. Facts, reason, and logic. These are the three pillars upon which the arguments of my team in today's debate rest. However, before examining these pillars, permit me to use today's topic and put it in its proper context to better clarify what it is and what it's not. Today's debate basically asks one question: whether or not global efforts of restoring degraded lands have been able to achieve the purpose of combating desertification and enhancing drought resilience, or whether such purposes have been defeated or resulted in total failure. And to this, we are so proud to propose recognizing our united efforts and celebrating our global progress. Having established our stance, facts present itself as our first pillar. So let's look at the statistics. According to a 2003 research carried out by the Center for Chinese Agricultural Policy, as of 1997, China experienced what will come to be known as one of the highest drought attacks in history, called the Yellow Fever Drought, with devastating floods in many other regions. This brought China into an action introducing the Slopy Lands Conversion Program, and by 2020, the program had converted more than 28 million hectares of cropland into forest and grassland, engendering significant improvement in soil quality and water retention. Ladies and gentlemen, this is progress. But you see, China is not the only actor in this fight. Africa, which is also one of the worst hit continents of desertification and drought, has also made considerable strides. For instance, the Great Green Wall Project is an African-led movement with over 20 million hectares of degraded land having been restored across participating countries. Communities involved have reported increased agricultural and forestry practices, according to the Conservation News. Ladies and gentlemen, this is progress. The list continues. Now, let's move on to the second pillar of logic. While we agree that there is no standard or scientific metric to measure the success or failure of this restoration, there remains one powerful philosophical tool to measure the degree of this combat, and it is simple. How far have we gone from where we were to where we are and to where we are supposed to be? I've given you statistics of how restoring degraded land has greatly improved the state of affairs across different continents. In other words, we are not just making progress, but making it globally. This point is better appreciated when we consider the fact that one climate action in a place has significant impact in other places. I mean, they say cutting down trees anywhere affects lives everywhere. In the same vein, restoring land anywhere combats desertification, not just in its immediate destination, but in other concentration. Enactment of international agreements like the United Nations Conventions to combat desertification also show how far we've gotten in ensuring that this very purpose is actualized. So we win today because our policy of land restoration addresses every aspect of the topic. First, it gets the job done, and secondly, it does it on a global scale. So to the last pillar, let's look at the best scenario offered by our friends in argument from which will be offered by our friends in argument from Ajayi Crowther. The major argument from opposition will center primarily on the fact that we have experienced so many obstacles in land restoration, which makes it an unfit gamble. Our response to this is that no policy or initiative is 100% without faults. It is not therefore a matter of encountering slight challenges, but ensuring that the positive far outweighs the negative. Remember, today's topic says progress, which stipulates ongoing process and not an absolute solution. So while we may not have gotten it right in combating, we may not have gotten it all right in combating desertification and drought, Facts show that there are great improvements, and that is progress. Ladies and gentlemen, it is World Environment Day, and I urge you all, including my friends from the opposing side, to plant more trees and restore more land, as that, I assure you, can effectively combat desertification and improve drought resilience. My name remains Chineke Ubechukwu. Thank you.
Thank you, Chineke. So we're going to have the participant from Ajayi Crowther University.
Henry David Thoreau once said, "What is the use of a fine house if you do not have a tolerable planet to put it on?" Also, Albert Einstein once said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used while creating them." Good afternoon, panel of judges, accurate timekeepers, co-debaters, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before you is Akimade Tobloba David, a 500 level student of Ajayi Crowther University, and I will be speaking against the topic, restoring degraded land to combat desertification and enhance drought resilience, a global progress or pitfall. Lester Howe Brown, an environmental analyst and founder of the World Watch Institute and Earth Policy Institute, in his book, Mobilizing to Save Civilization, he explained land degradation as the loss of soil productivity and the reduction in the ecosystem services the land provides. While Dr. Richard Thomas, a senior scientist and former director of United Nations, explained desertification as land degradation in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas, resulting from various factors, including climatic variation and human activities. Firstly, I will be speaking on high cost and resource allocation. Restoring degraded land can be extremely costly, involving significant financial investment in reforestation, soil rehabilitation, water management system, and sustainable agricultural practices. For many developing countries, this cost might divert funds from critical areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. Nigeria is an example of a developing country where an average man does not have up to $1 to fend for himself daily. He does not have access to good food, healthcare, and surviving as a whole. A part of Nigeria is called the Niger Delta, which is currently being exploited by foreign countries. As the land has been blessed with crude oil, also this has turned to a war and also a cost to Niger Delta. Congo is currently experiencing genocide, and while the Palestinians have been at war and other countries who cannot afford basic amenities, shouldn't their survival come first before our thoughts drift to restoring land? Moving on, alternative environmental priorities. There are numerous environmental issues that take precedence over land restoration. For instance, addressing air and water pollution change through renewable energy and protecting natural habitats. As you can hear me, you would see that my voice is not clear because I've been affected by the air pollution. There are other issues that come first. Sorry. Moving on, as more critical impacts have been done to the environment, we can see there's no single day we do not experience carbon emissions in Nigeria when other developed countries have moved on to electric cars such as Tesla's, who does not give them these issues. Also, globally, we have economic viability and opportunity. The economic benefit of land restorations are not always immediate or guaranteed for communities that rely on agriculture or other forms of land use for their livelihood. Shifting focus to restoration might reduce their short-term economic productivity, as this opportunity cost of dedicating land and resource to restoration rather than more immediate activity. It is funny, as my co-speaker or co-debater once said, that we have to keep maintaining the process. But how long do we have to maintain this process adequately for us to see changes in our environment? Also, the long-term success of land projects is often uncertain, as restored land may require continuous maintenance and management, which can be very difficult to sustain. Rachel Carson once said, "Man is part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself." Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely speech. We are going to have the second speaker from UI continue their line of debate. Thank you very much.
More than 2 billion hectares of the world's deforested and degraded land have potential for forest and landscape restoration, according to a 2019 article by the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP. The realization of the great harm the billions of degraded hectares have done to humanity, and the more harm it could do, hit the world about 3 decades ago. And so the Committee of Nations came together to address these dire issues, just to give a future to humanity, an action that is undoubtedly a step in the right direction. I'm Idowu Ademola from the University of Ibadan, here to propose the motion. Audience, restoring degraded land to combat desertification and enhance drought resilience is a string of words which could otherwise be substituted with land restoration, which, according to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, is the ecological restoration of a site to a natural landscape and habitat which is safe and beneficial to humans, wildlife, and communities. A pitfall, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is an unseen danger, while global progress implies that this action of land restoration is a step in the right direction. The opposition made quite a number of points, many of which contained some internal conflict, which I would love to resolve now. The first thing that they mentioned is that it usually always involves a high cost in executing land restoration. This claim is not true. It is not entirely true, largely because there are many local means of ensuring that land is restored. For instance, afforestation is an ideal way of ensuring land restoration. You don't necessarily need all the funds in the world to effect afforestation. Even in villages, in local regions, in Africa and in Nigeria, for example, people plant trees. So with the intentionality in terms of afforestation, of course, we are looking at land restoration, which could help to combat drought resilience as well as deforestation. Next, that they mentioned carbon emissions, that Nigeria cannot afford some gadgets that are being used in the Western world. If we cannot afford the gadget that they use, why can't we adopt a model that can help to maintain our universe, one in which Nigeria as a nation is a part of as well? We can indulge or engage in these local practices, which will in turn help to sustain the universe that we all live in. And now I'll move to my substantive argument. The first thing is what I term climate cleansing. The ozone layer is under great threat. Actions of humans, if not curtailed, might result in a huge loss of the ozone layer by the year 2050. According to an article by byjaws.com. Little wonder, because international gatherings were convened on this matter, including the Montreal Protocol in 1987, also the United Nations Framework on Climate Change. Now, land restoration would greatly foster the resuscitation and healing of the planet. Planting of trees, for instance, would help because these trees help to absorb carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas responsible for global warming. And more importantly, judges, the protection of the planet isn't just a desire we are at liberty to effect. It is an imperative duty that we owe the coming generation. And for this, land restoration in combating deforestation and drought resilience is indeed a global progress, certainly not a pitfall or any potential undoing. Now, the next is public health. Audience, restoring land also has clear benefits in terms of public health. According to the Observer Research Foundation, healthy ecosystems can act as buffers against the spread of infectious diseases by maintaining natural habitats that support a balanced wildlife population. When ecosystems are disrupted, pathogens can more easily jump from animals to humans, especially in regions prone to drought and desertification. So, investing in land restoration implies creating healthier environments that are less conducive to disease outbreaks. Furthermore, on health, studies have shown that restoring natural habitats reduces the contact between wildlife and human population, thereby reducing the risk of zoonotic spillovers. A perfect example to ground this point is the case of the Ecosystem Task Force in the Indian Army, who have undertaken afforestation projects in Uttarakhand. This project has not only enhanced local biodiversity, it has also reduced human-wildlife conflict, thus aiding public health and environmental sustainability. Judges, opponents, in line with the famous slogan, land restoration is the way to go. It is indeed our land and our future. So, ladies and gentlemen, judges, co-debater, we are the generation of restoration.
Hello.
Thank you.
Okay. So, for the next speaker, please be mindful of the time limits, and we would like to have the second speaker to finish up the case for the opposition, please. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Ma. All protocols duly observed. My name is Susan Alabi, the second speaker from Ajayi Crowther University, Oyo State, Nigeria. According to UNCC, around 500 million people live in desertified areas. When we think of desert, regions such as Middle East, Northern Africa, or Central Asia may spring to our mind. But growing desertification in the wake of climate change is increasingly drawing ever wider circles around the globe. United Nations latest data presented by 126 parties in their 2020 national report show that 15.5% of land is now degraded. Desertification is a type of land degradation in which an already relatively dry land becomes increasingly and degrading productive soil and losing its bodies of water, biodiversity, and vegetation cover. Desertification is driven by the combination of factors including climate change, deforestation, overgrazing, and unsustainable agricultural practices. We have deserts in Nigeria like Sahara, Gobi Desert, and Kalahari Desert. Restoring degraded land to combat desertification is a thoughtful idea. However, it's a crucial effort that comes with potential dangers, such as unintended consequences, displacement of local communities, high costs, like my first speakers earlier said, uncertain outcomes, inadequate maintenance in Nigeria. Restoration efforts may inadvertently introduce invasive species, disrupt native ecosystem, or alter natural processes. What we intended might not be the outcome of the restoration at the end of the day. The speaker from University of Ibadan mentioned that land is the goal and all of that. But my question is, how long shall we keep waiting? How long shall we trust this process? Does the process even know we are trusting it at all? And how adequate can this be? Another point is migration. Will people keep moving from one place to another while restoration of degraded land is going on? Like my first speaker also said, it is important that we focus on pressing environmental issues at this moment than restoring the land. We can't keep focusing on land, although land is also a major factor. However, we have air pollution and water pollution, which are also pressing environmental issues. Land is not the only problem we have. If we focus on land, then we have unintended circumstances going ahead of us, rather. Also, displacement of local communities. We have local communities with their traditions and customs. We cannot disturb the customs and traditions of the people and displace the local communities in the name of restoring degraded land, instead of us to focus on more important things at the moment. Other pressing issues are there in Nigeria, and we can also have uncertain outcomes. It is essential to carefully consider these dangers and adopt a thoughtful, inclusive, and sustainable local approach to restoration, prioritizing local communities, most importantly, traditional knowledge and ecosystem resilience. Thank you.
You mentioned migration. There is no way that migration comes into play in this equation at all. The concept of afforestation is that in lands where there's been deforestation, trees will be planted in those places where they were before. People don't need to move from one place to another at all. Those places largely are not inhabited already. So we are saying where there are no trees, let's plant more trees. Let's have more afforestation effects for the betterment of the universe.
All right. So to answer your question, people live in desert, Sahara Desert in Nigeria, Borno State, for instance. Also, planting trees, infrastructure developments go on in that area, and some people might not be comfortable with such developments going on, trying to construct trees and all of that. The migration comes in when a development is going on, project is going on, and people need to move from that area for them to plant those trees and also to live their life in good health and sound mind. And also, do we have to uproot our buildings to restore degraded land? And where does afforestation come in? Even when we want to restore degraded land and put resources in these pressing issues, how about high cost of living, high productivity, high cost of food, and increasing poverty and violent conflicts for land? These are the issues that we should consider, sir.
I have 1 minute to conclude your debate speech, and Ajayi Crowther, you have 1 minute to conclude your debate speech. Your time starts now.
So thank you to my opponents, and then thank you everybody. So I'll be summarizing our stand in today's debate. And for example, the point on migration. Now, my second speaker already addressed that particular point. But one thing stands out in the entire argument of my opponent in today's debate, and which is the fact that land restoration is costly, like the first speaker said, and all of that. And the second speaker also mentioned that we should leave land restoration and focus on other pressing issues. Now, this shows how very little my opponents take climate actions. As a matter of fact, climate actions have been seen to lead to so many of these actions or so many of these problems that my opponents are even mentioning. So why attack the side effects, leaving the root problems? So on that point, we win today's debate. They also mentioned that land restoration might also lead to a level of inequality, as some developed countries might have more success stories than developed or underdeveloped countries, paraphrased. But one thing is sure, this is not as a result of the policy of land restoration, but possibly as a result of poor implementation and local conditions. And statistics have already showed that the trend is positive. It's an ongoing process. All right, thank you very much.
The Chinese bamboo tree takes 5 years to grow before the benefit is gotten. Cocoa, which our beverage is made from, takes 4 to 5 years, even longer, before benefit is gotten from it. Uncertain long benefits from afforestation is the issue that we've been talking about, as the long-term success of land restoration projects is often uncertain, as we know that we do not have the resources to maintain this. Most of us as scholars and white and black, when last did we visit our farms to make sure trees have been planted? Ask yourself, when last did you visit your village to check your grandparent trees or your parent trees that you've planted? And yet you speak confidently on afforestation. It is time that we make new laws to help with other urgent issues. Thank you very much.
Totality of my opponent's argument today is simply undermining the dangers of deforestation and drought resilience. Deforestation and drought resilience does great harm to the nation. In terms of food security, one, in terms of public health, and in terms of climate change, I must state unequivocally here that these are not secondary concerns. The opponent is trying to undermine the relevance of these things. Well, afforestation does help food security. How can we survive in a nation without agriculture and food in place? Public health is a primary concern. I mentioned that there are numerous infections that flow from these regions where there's deforestation and coming in contact with humans. I mentioned climate change as well. Climate change is not a secondary concern. It is something that has the potential to ruin the universe if we do not take care of it. So these are not secondary concerns. These are things that we should pay attention to. Finally, on cost, the fact is amounts being expended in terms of infections that come from issues of deforestation amounts to billions of dollars every year. So any expense spent on afforestation is actually to curtail expenses that are irrelevant, that could come if we do not take these things into practice and into place. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to our opponents. They've been doing a good job since morning. Addressing combat desertification is not what we should focus on. With other pressing environmental issues that we have, it is essential to carefully consider these dangers and also adapt a thoughtful and inclusive and sustainable approach to restoration, prioritizing local communities, traditional knowledge, and ecosystem resilience. According to Henry David, what is the use of a fine house when we don't have a planet to put it on? What is the use of all these ideas, restoring degraded land, when we don't have a planet to put it on? Let us focus on our planet. Like I rightly said, restoring degraded land is a thoughtful idea that comes with crucial efforts and dangers ahead. Thank you.
So very briefly, we're going to announce the winners of the debate. We had some network issues. So I have with me Ms. Oluwadamilola Agbaje. So she's going to introduce herself, and then she's going to tell us the technicalities of the debate, and then announce the winners. Thank you so much.
So my name is Oluwadamilola Agbaje Fatimat. I am currently a representative of the Ekiti State Youth Parliament, and I've had a lovely time in this meeting across the sessions, and also watching and moderating the debate was a lovely experience. The arguments were very weighty, and at the end of the day, it was a close call, but definitely we are going to have to judge this on some important metrics. So the speakers are not here, but we'll go ahead with the justification anyways. So the topic of the debate was restoring degraded lands to combat desertification and enhance drought resilience, a global progress or pitfall. So we had the first speaker from University of Ibadan come to contextualize the debate on the basis of fact, reason, and logic. So it tells us that this debate is not something that has happened in the past, but it is something that is happening over a period of time. That is why it contextualizes to talk about sustainable development. It gives us some examples about China and Africa and why those things were important. And it just tells us the importance of land restoration. So the first speaker from Ajayi Crowther tells us about why this is not currently feasible in the context of cost, and also the fact that this is something that if we sink so much money into, there is no direct guarantee that this is something that is going to work out. And for very economically disadvantaged countries, it is better to put our money where our mouth is and just invest in other things that have a specific and projected outcome that is going to surely happen. That's why it talks about other means of protecting the environment. So in response to that, the second speaker from UI does a recontextualization of the debate, which was very important, to explain that reforestation does not always have to be sophisticated. It can be simple, and it can be done in such a way that can carry citizens from developing countries along. That's why it tells us about things that are very simple, as planting new trees and also creating a form of awareness for people within those countries about their need, because people already plant trees in the status quo. So why don't we leverage into something that already happens and just make it wider? And that is something that can always work. So when the second speaker from Ajayi Crowther comes to talk to us about they reaffirm the point of invasive species. They talk about uncertainty of outcomes, and they talk about adopting local approaches. However, that doesn't really fly because of the fact that the approach of restoring degraded land is already the local approach that these guys have already given us. So the biggest case that was coming from Ajayi Crowther University was the point of the cost and the fact that this is not tailored towards developing countries, which the recontextualization that was done by the University of Ibadan ultimately defeated that main point. So for me, I have University of Ibadan over Ajayi Crowther. I have the second speaker from University of Ibadan as first. I have the first speaker from University of Ajayi Crowther as second. I have the first speaker from University of Ibadan as third, and I have the second speaker from Ajayi Crowther as fourth. Thank you very much for listening to the debates and the justification of your ranking.
Thank you very much. So we have our debate winner as University of Ibadan. We're going to communicate with them on the prize for the debate. Ms. Ajayi, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. I was expecting for you to introduce yourself as a pro debater, if there's anything like that, with all the awards that you've won, debated. But thank you so much for joining the session and for moderating that session. So